So we'll just go ahead and wait for a few more folks to join, and then we can get started. But let's go ahead and get started. Um, we've got Carol Brooke and Jean Dismay attending, and we'll have other folks who are watching this after the fact. We may have some folks join along the way as well. Um, Jean and Carol, I'm going to unmute you both for a second, just so we can say hi, and I'd love to hear from both of you what it is that you're hoping to get out of this webinar.
Well, this is Carol Brooke. I'm interested in figuring out a way to approach manufacturers and commercial office owners on energy reduction programs, and so far been difficult to get their attention.
Great. Well, you're in the right place. And Jean, are you on the phone, or are you on the computer?
Yeah. I'm on my computer. Um, I actually had hoped that some members of my commission would be listening in because I brought this to their attention already, and there were a lot of questions that I didn't have the answers to. And so I'm kind of disappointed that no one else registered. Uh, I don't know that. I've already spoken with John Post once. I guess I'm wondering, one key piece of information for me is who was the contact at Cepheid for this, which I don't know that.
Who is the contact at Cephia, you said?
Yeah, yeah, because we're going to be having, we got a grant for the CPACE program, but I also was hoping we could cover some of this at the same time during the same talks so that businesses could be um, given their options.
Great.
And I'm hoping to get somebody from Cephia at that, and perhaps somebody from Cephia to come to our commission to talk about
Great. Well, I'm going to put you back on mute, Gene, just so we can have a
it.
clear line.
Yep.
And looks like we have John Greeno on the phone too. He'll be online here in a second. Um, so great, welcome, folks. This is Clean Water Action's webinar on business outreach. The purpose of this is to give folks in task forces across the state the information and tools and contacts that you need to do effective outreach in your community to businesses, to commercial entities. And we've got two great presenters here who have a lot to contribute and are ready to answer questions. Doug Lombardi of Earthlight Technologies, who is a small business energy advantage contractor and a commercial PACE contractor as well, has been a real big help to us and is generously offering his time tonight. And then John Post, who is a member of the Litchfield Energy Task Force. He's been one of the people heading up an outreach campaign in Litchfield, and he's going to talk a little bit about what they've done, what they've put together, how they structured that, um, give you a real sort of inside view and some tools and documents that he put together on how that looked for them and how it might look for you all. So what we'll do is we'll start now. If you have questions as we go, I think there are two good ways to ask those so that since all the participants are on mute, one thing you can do is on the side bar where you've got your sort of go-to webinar control panel, there's a chat window. And if you type a question into the chat window, that'll pop up and we can either unmute you or we can just answer the question. And then also there should be a little button where you can raise your hand. It should be on that GoToWebinar control panel and just look like a hand. And if you do that, that'll signal to me that you have a question. We can go ahead and unmute you and you can ask the question. And that'll help us keep the line clear. So I think John Greeno is on the phone. John, can you, I just unmuted you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm on. Thank you.
Great. We just asked the other people on the phone, just for a brief second, what is it that you're hoping to get out of the webinar tonight? John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I am. Actually, I'm filling for somebody else. But we are hoping to learn how to reach out to the local businesses and find out how we can reach out, make contact and see what we can do, what we can offer.
Sounds great. I'm going to put you back on mute, but if you have a question, you have the chat window or raising your hand. So great. The way that we'll do this, I'm going to turn it right over to Doug Lombardi. He's going to talk a little bit about Small Business Energy Advantage, the sort of main program for most of these projects that we'd want to talk about. He's going to give an overview, sort of what kinds of businesses and projects it's most useful for, what task force leaders should know about it. If there are any questions, then we'll have folks ask Doug. And then I'll turn it over to John, John Post, who's going to talk a little bit about that campaign that they've been running in Litchfield. And then when we're done, we'll have a chance to ask and answer any questions that come up, and then we'll wrap up. We won't go past 8:30 tonight, and it's likely that we'll be done quite a bit sooner than that. So without further ado, Doug, if you want to take it over, I'm going to go and share. I'm going to set up the screen to share your screen.
Okay, great.
So should be all yours.
Okay, everybody, I'm Doug Lombardi. That's Tucker. What I'm going to do is I've gone right to the Energize Connecticut website, and I've gone to the business side. As you can see, it's labeled residential, business, not-for-profit, government, municipalities, and so on. And to fully take advantage of the website and understand small business, I would encourage you to go to this site and get a full and fully understand what's going on here. As Justin said, Earthlight Technology is a small business energy advantage contractor in Connecticut for both CL&P and UI. And we offer solutions which include, as you can see, free energy assessments, basically for the commercial business. All they have to do is give their CL&P or UI account number, and if they're in good standing with the utility, they qualify for this free energy audit. Once that audit is complete, it'll include comprehensive proposals for all eligible energy measures, which we'll talk about in a second. The owner decides what improvements they want to make, and it's customizable to their needs. There is no obligation to install, so everything up to that point is included. Once you're approved and you want to take advantage of the program, there are no upfront costs for the installed upgrades. The incentives can be up to 50% of the installed cost. In addition to that, the utility offers 0% interest-free and low-cost financing. The financing would happen for projects that are over $100,000. And then there is a 1-year warranty for contractors, parts and labor, and depending on the application, those warranties are actually longer. Most of the LED products today are 5 years, and some are even greater. And again, you must qualify for financing, so the customer must be in good standing with the utility. Okay. How it works. Again, our company is one of 15 or 18 contractors that have bid with the utility to become a part of this program. So your own electrical contractor cannot take advantage of all of these benefits. You'd click on your utility. Once you determine your eligibility, so if you were to call the utility, they would find someone in your area, and if I was in your area, I would give you a call back. We would schedule the visit. Step 3, we'd schedule the visit. As I mentioned, there's no cost or any obligation. The utility then reviews all of those measures, and it gets approved by CL&P. And this is an important step in terms of the credibility of the program. So, for example, many folks could go out and solicit an electrician or an HVAC contractor, and they may suggest to you that by going from one technology to another that you're going to save money or save kWh. If you go through this small business program, all of these measures are verified by the engineers and program administrators at the utility. which provides quite a safety factor for business owners. Step 4, after the paperwork is signed, the project is started. It's typically within 30 days. And a lot of times, in many projects, the cost of the upgrade is completely covered by the cost savings. Step 5, the interest-free financing for the balance of the project is put into place, and once the project is complete, you actually, that loan comes right on your CLNP or UI bill. The typical types of upgrades that we do: interior and exterior lighting, including fluorescent, LED, occupancy sensors. We do daylight harvesting now with LED, heating and air conditioning, energy efficient equipment upgrades, programmable thermostats, energy management systems. For restaurants, convenience stores, gas stations, there's refrigeration, and then even natural gas savings equipment, along with upgrading HVAC. There are a number of measures that can be addressed for natural gas savings equipment. Other things that are available would be air compressors, frequency drives, motors, and then even other custom measures to go deeper and to address some envelope issues with buildings. Okay. The last thing I guess I would, I talked a little bit about who's eligible, but almost anyone. There is a small business program is for commercial and industrial customers with an average 12-month peak demand between 10 and 200 kW. Typically, what I would encourage you to do to send that in, and we would apply for that with the utility and determine if that customer is over or under the 200 kW. And the rules are a little different between UI and CLNP. So for example, if you have a large user that has multiple locations on different meters, CLNP may look at those individually, whereas UI, if you're a large user and one of your meters is over 200 kW, you would not be eligible if your other buildings were under. So that's a distinct difference between the two utilities. Having said that, almost anybody is eligible. As you can see the list there. And as I said, you can go directly to call Wise Use, and a customer service representative from one of the utilities can actually connect you to the right contractor. That's all I got.
Great. Doug, I had a couple questions for you to kick it off, just things that I've heard from folks. One person was asking earlier today if churches are eligible, and I thought maybe if you can talk about just a kind of business that maybe an example of a business or two that you've worked with, and a little bit about what that project looked like.
Yes, churches are eligible. One thing that I would say is that churches sometimes the cost savings on a church is sometimes difficult, especially if it has very low run hours. Obviously, the longer the run hours, if you're going from a 60-watt incandescent lamp to a 12-watt LED replacement lamp, that 50-watt differential, the incentive is a lot higher if that light is on 40 or 50 hours a week versus a typical place of worship that's on for perhaps 10 or 15 hours a week. So the longer the run hours, the bigger the incentives because of the greater savings. I would say that these programs have been around for quite some time, and where we're finding a lot of our work is coming from right now is from commercial property. A lot of, as many may know, there's a lot of vacant, a lot of unoccupied commercial real estate in the state of Connecticut, and typically over the years, most of those properties are gross rents. And what we're finding is that many property managers now are trying to take advantage of these programs so that at the end, their customers are paying a lower dollar per square foot because they have an energy efficient building, not only for lighting, but for energy management and mechanical heating and cooling upgrades. The second, I would say another growth area over the last couple of years, it's only been since 2010 has CLNP and UI had good incentives for exterior, and coupled with the fact that the cost of LED technology is becoming more and more affordable. We're doing about a gas station a week, us personally, and most of the larger shopping plazas, your grocery store shopping plazas, are all doing their exterior parking lot lights. And at this point, I believe LED, with dusk to dawn run hours, with the incentives available through the utility, and with the competitive nature of all the LED products coming to market and the reduction in the price of those products, we are seeing 100-pole parking lots being cost break-even propositions for the owners.
Wow. We've got a question here from Carol Brook. Carol, I'm going to unmute you. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My question is basically who pays for the assessment, the upfront assessment?
Well, as part of our relationship with the utility, once you're qualified with CLNP or UI, we absorb the cost of that audit. So that's a business decision on our part as being eligible for the program, Carol.
Yeah. Okay. What happens if it gets to more than just a walkthrough kind of assessment? If it gets to a level 2 type of looking at the...
Sure. Yeah, typically we're authorized to do level 2 audits. So we would review all of the lighting, we would review all of the mechanicals, we would make all of those recommendations, and then if in fact the building owner wanted something more comprehensive, those options are available on a case-by-case basis. Typically, for office buildings, large, the only times we may get into a situation is large process manufacturing, and even then, we would tend to set up a meeting with the utility, with the business owner, and with our engineers, and pretty much outline what scopes of work, what scopes of evaluation would be included, and how far we would be willing to go before there may be some fees associated with the engineering.
Carol, does that answer your question?
Yeah, in general, I've had a situation where an ESCO came into a building and did the first pass-through, but it involved a 50-year-old building and converting from steam to heat, to hot water heating. And so it was proposed that an independent engineer come in and do the work, and there was going to be an outright fee for that, which I can understand that, but that was enough to discourage going ahead anyway. And I just wondered if the state or if there was any way to get reimbursement for that sort of thing.
I will say this, that even when, and Genevieve could speak to this, with more substance, but as a PACE contractor, if there was, and I'll talk specifically about solar projects, if we have a large solar project that's moving along, and let's say we were going to submit it through CPACE, if there were engineering costs up front associated with that project, the owner of the building could actually finance those costs into the project. Those typically are for projects in excess of financed of $150,000. It wouldn't typically happen for something smaller than that. So I would talk with your ESCO, and if they are a authorized contractor, there are ways to get those costs at least financed, so that you don't have a large upfront cost. And I would say the more reputable contractors, we understand, and I'm not saying anyone's not reputable, but all the contractors that are in our, that have a relationship with the utility, we understand the risks inherent with proposals, and some of them go and some of them don't. But typically you should be able to get that engineer at least included in a large-scale project as part of the finance package.
And just to be clear, Doug, you're talking about, there's a distinction between the Small Business Energy Advantage Program, and then you were mentioning Commercial PACE and Genevieve Sherman, who's our contact at the Clean Energy Finance and Investment Authority.
Yes, thank you, Justin.
Yep. Jean Desmay typed a question, and Jean, I'm going to unmute you if you just want to ask that out loud.
Oh, let's see. What was the question? Let's see.
You were talking about
at some point I read,
renters.
Yep. Right, a 5-year lease, because most of the business owners aren't the owner of the building. So we were concerned about that because it's certainly very unusual to have a 5-year lease.
And when you say a 5-year lease, saying that that's a short period of time?
That's a long period of time.
Okay.
No, they're on 1-year leases.
Yeah. I would say that for as long as we've been a part of the small business program, I would say that one of the paradoxes for a small business owner is that typically, and I'm talking for perhaps hair salons or let's say a small restaurant, maybe a retail space, an independent Verizon cellular phone dealer, mm-hmm. and they're renting space in a plaza that's owned by somebody else, in a strip plaza. Those and typically I would agree with you. They're in 1, 2, 3, 5-year leases, and so on those types of projects, which are the perfect candidates for a small business program, there is the push-pull between, I'm somewhere in the middle of my 5-year lease, and now I have this great opportunity in front of me, and I want to get all this old technology out of my building, and yet the payback is 3 years, and so I'm going to have a break-even proposition between my, I'm not going to pay any more on my utility bill, but I'm not going to pay any less. I'm going to pay it off in 3 years, and then I'm going to move and go somewhere else. So that's real, Gene.
Yeah.
And that's something that we deal with every day. And I guess it's more on a case-by-case basis. I think that what you have to if you're trying to support your community, I think what sometimes you have to smoke out is, and I run into this a lot over the years, the guy's been there for 20 years, and then you bring him a proposal, and it's a payback of 27 months, and then he says, yeah, but my renewal's in a year. Okay, well, you've been here for 20. Where are you going?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, so I think it really depends. I think the bigger issue for small business today, and what we run into at the utility quite a bit, is the guy that's struggling. He's struggling to meet, to pay his bill on time, and he's calling the utility for help. And he's got to, unfortunately, it's still an investment, no matter how you look at it. And I think that's sometimes where small businesses are paralyzed, is that even though it's cost break even, they're wondering if where their business is going to be at the end of 36 months or 48 months if it's a larger place and the payback is a little bit longer. And I don't, I don't know how to overcome that fear, or if you want to call it an objection, but it's real.
Well, the other side of that is these improvements are going to stay with the building. So you're asking the person who's renting to take on the cost of a building improvement, that they'll be responsible for that debt even if they're not there, and the improvement goes to the owner if they leave.
I'll tell you where we've had some success, and if you can look at and let's say you have a larger strip plaza with a lot of small tenants, a lot of these mom and pops, and it's quite old. If you can take a more comprehensive approach to that building owner, what we've been able to do over time is we've been able to, because typically what you'll find is each tenant is responsible for the payment of their heating and cooling bill,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not responsible, and they may be responsible depending on the size. Larger, law firms, if they're a larger space, they might be responsible for the preventative maintenance of that mechanical equipment, but they're not responsible for the replacement of it. So
Right.
if you start at the top and you start with the building owner, and we help you to identify that there is a long-term asset improvement opportunity in this building. We've had a lot of success with either shared payment, where that actual tenant is sharing in the cost of that upgrade, or in many cases, the comprehensive bonuses available through the utility far outweigh the building owner paying to retrofit 20 fixtures in a hair salon. And the building owners actually come up and actually pay for the lighting upgrades. So I would encourage everyone, when they have a few folks in a plaza that are struggling and have old technology, to go right to the building owner first and work your way back down.
Okay, even though the owner's not paying the electric bill, so we were going with the idea that it's based on who has the bill.
But there is, and again, it depends on the size, but more often than not, that landlord has common area charges back to the tenant. So if he has a parking lot with lights in it,
Mm-hmm.
that's his meter.
That's true.
Okay, typically, what you're going to find is, in some cases, they've got empty space, or they have, if there's hallways in it, depending on the size, and in some cases, even the mechanical equipment. I find that there's some landlords that some of the mechanical equipment is on their space, and again, it depends on what type of building, but
right. So they're not going to make the upgrades to the tenant space particularly. They're going to make the upgrade to the businesses' common spaces.
But I would encourage you that the way the program works is, if to replace mechanical equipment, they need the savings from that tenant space. They need the lighting savings from that tenant space to help offset the cost of the mechanical upgrade. And it's a bit of a complicated formula, but that project gets up to 50 cents per kWh saved. There's not a lot of saving. Remember, your cooling season, your air conditioning is using electricity, and it's a very short season. There's not a lot of kWh savings from replacing just compressors. They need the lighting savings from those tenant upgrades in order to get into the big money, and we've done it time and time again. And I could if I knew the space you're talking about, I could be more helpful.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is figure out as our Energy Commission who to approach first and what are the easy ones and what are the harder ones. And so that's kind of where our questions are coming from. Many of our businesses are in older buildings and retail on the first floors and renters on the upper floors. So if we went to those retail businesses and they don't have parking lots or any of those things, it's a little historic downtown area.
Yeah.
But then there's other places where we do have strip malls and standalone buildings. So we're just trying to get a feel for where to start.
John will tell you that it's somewhat contagious. If you can get a couple people that start to believe, and I think you should listen to John because he's got a grassroots, his grassroots approach is, to me, second to none.
Yeah, let me suggest this, that let's transition over to John and then circle back on this question at the end to see if there's more we want to explore about sort of who to go to first, where, how to sort of kick off a campaign and who are the right targets. Is that all right?
Sure.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to put you back on mute, Gene. And John, are you there?
I am still here, yes.
Great. So let's make that transition over to John now. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. So folks should see my screen. It says SBEA Toolkit Litchfield Energy Task Force. Is that what you're seeing, John?
I can see that. Yes, that's perfect.
Perfect. So John Post is one of the members of the Litchfield Energy Task Force. He's on the ground doing this stuff, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Okay, thanks, Justin, and thank you, Doug, for a great intro. And thanks for all the participants for signing up and listening in today. I think before I do the dive into this toolkit, just a quick recap of what Doug had presented, and maybe even a kind of an upfront comment. Our task force got into this SBNA program back in the spring, or even in the winter. And I must admit, at first, it was a bit daunting, but as we started to peel the onion, it became much easier to understand, and our confidence around the rollout started to grow. And really, the reason is we ended up calling this a no-brainer program. And many of us actually included that kind of terminology in the pitch we made to our small businesses. And the reason we came to this no-brainer description is that for the vast majority of the small businesses that you call on, they have an opportunity to reduce their energy use, save some money by spending less on electricity, without any out-of-pocket expenditures on their part. It's almost too good to believe. And I think as we go through what I've got to present, you'll see how we arrived at that point of view. Just to recap a definition, you'll hear me make reference to SBEA repeatedly. That's obviously referring to the Small Business Energy Advantage Program, something that's co-sponsored by the state and the two utilities, CLNP and UI. And this is
in part, what we would say to the small business owner when we actually made the call, that the program provides that business owner access to what you could describe as cost-effective, turnkey energy-saving services for those folks that don't have the time nor the expertise to do these evaluations themselves. That's really the program in a nutshell. There are really four basic components. Doug walked you through these, but this is also something we would encapsulate when quickly describing it to a small business owner. We called it our elevator speech. So there are four parts. First, there's a free, no commitment audit of the business's energy use. Two, that auditor or contractor comes back with an energy savings proposal, and that business owner has the option of accepting all, none, or somewhere in between of the proposals. So the owner is in complete control. And that's important to address early on because business owners, when hearing about this, think they're about to step into something that's going to make or turn into commitments that they may not necessarily want to actually accept. The third description is, as Doug had pointed out, they'll have access to incentives that could cover up to half of the expenditures of the proposal. And the fourth is, in most cases, they'll qualify for an interest-free financing for the balance that's due. So those four components basically led us to this no-brainer description for the program. One final comment before we get into the details of the toolkit, and that's really what the process is. And we would describe this early in the call with the small business owner so that person understands kind of globally how the thing is going to unfold. So first, if someone agrees to actually participate in the SBNA program, the contractor would come and conduct the audit. After some period of time, a couple of weeks typically, they would return with a recommended set of energy saving suggestions. And that would include costs, what the incentives were, and what the payback plan would look like. At that point, the owner decides, and as I said earlier, that owner could elect to accept everything that's recommended. They could decide not to do any of the proposal, or somewhere in between. The incentives would be described, and the balance beyond the incentive can be covered by this 0% loan. So as we started to roll this out, it actually became a fun program to do, and people got into it, and it turned into quite a satisfying experience. So let's go into the toolkit. This is essentially a set of documents that we put together here in Litchfield that you can scavenge and borrow so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You'd, of course, want to make it your own, but you can use this as a starting point. The first
and I'll interrupt you for a second there, John. These tools, all of these documents are available online. We've posted them at the Clean Water Action sort of Google Docs repository. And the way to get there is bit.ly.com. So that's bity.com/CWACT public. So Clean Water Action CD, CWACT public. Or you can go to cleanwater.org/CT/Muni, MUNI, as in municipal, MUNI. And that'll give you, there's a link there. You go into business outreach, and then there's the Litchfield toolkit. So all of these documents are available there. And we're also happy to email them out. John's given us his contact information too, so you can get in touch with him.
Yeah, and another option for getting this information, if you have trouble finding it, is you can just shoot me an email, and I'll send you all of the components of the toolkit. I had done that with Gene a couple weeks ago, so that's another alternative for you. So the first thing I want to refer to is what I call the one-page marketing plan or strategic plan. And this is literally, it's a one-page marketing plan. And it was a document we put together early in the process of getting our arms around the program. And it really became an organizing tool, a way to get everybody on the task force tuned in and in agreement to what it is we wanted to accomplish. So a couple things that are important on this document is that we laid out what our vision was. What did we want to accomplish by undertaking the SBNA program? And then we nailed down a specific goal. So we actually put it, words on paper, everybody bought in, so there was clarity over what the vision and what the goal was. And then we set in motion efforts to try to define the two key strategies. The first was, who in the heck are we going to call on? And then secondly, what was the message? How do we want to deliver the program in a compelling way? So that's essentially what's captured. I won't go through the details of the document. You can do that on your own. But I would encourage all of you to do something similar to this at the front end so that you get a level of consensus with your task force about what you're about to undertake. The next thing under the getting organized part of my roadmap here was vetting the contractors. So pretty early in the process, what we decided to do, and Justin, if you call that document up, we created an Excel spreadsheet where we went out and actually conducted interviews with all of the Connecticut-based contractors. There were 17 or 18 of them. We put calls into all of them. I think it was 11 or 12 who called back. And you want to go to the very first tab where it says detailed profiles. Thank you. So we essentially conducted a detailed interview, same interview with same questions for all of the contractors. And we gathered information such as, were they still SBA approved? Would they be willing to travel to Litchfield if they were selected to do the audit? We wanted to know what systems they would audit, just how comprehensive was it. We asked questions around who actually would do the work. Would the company do it themselves, or would they sub it out to another contractor? And then we asked whether or not they would be willing to share a finder's fee or a small fee back to the task force once the job had been completed. So all this information is captured for those 11 or 12 contractors that actually called back and went through the interview process. What we then decided to do was to get ready for the actual kickoff. And I think at this stage, Justin, why don't you go to the sample script? We pretty quickly determined that the level of confidence within the task force of making this call, this essentially a sales call with a small business, was kind of all over the place. Some of the people in the task force had prior sales experience, and for them it wasn't an issue. But others were a bit intimidated by the whole process. So what we decided to do was actually two things. We spent one meeting where we actually conducted role plays, and Justin played a part in this, attended one of our meetings, and organized the team into groups of two, where one member played task force member, i.e. the salesperson, and the other was a small business owner. And then we actually role played how the pitch would unfold. And then we reversed roles and completed the process. It was like pulling teeth, getting people to accept to do this kind of role play. But once they agreed to do it, everybody uniformly agreed that it was a useful exercise. And it helped reduce the barrier, kind of the challenges associated with actually walking in the door and making this call. The second thing we did was we actually put words down on a piece of paper to allow members of the task force to practice the verbiage at home before they actually made the call. So that's what's captured in what you're seeing now. It's essentially a recommended sales script that you could use when you actually call on a customer. Next thing I want to refer everybody to is what's referred to as the Litchfield Area Business Association, or LABA script or talk. This was part of our introduction of the program into the community, and it was a way of accelerating the education of the town's small businesses. And what we did was we got on the agenda at our local business association meeting. This is the Litchfield Area Association, Business Association, or LABA. We got 10 minutes on their agenda. They meet monthly. And typically there are 40 to 60 businesses that showed up. So we described the program in this 10-minute segment, gave everybody the overview, and that was a very important introductory step in launching the program into the town. We were successful to the point where 6 of the companies in the audience came up and said we wanted to actually undertake the audit. So that boosted the spirits and the confidence of the task force that we had a message that seemed to be resonating. So I'd encourage everybody to try to duplicate that with a business association. Maybe it's a Rotary, maybe it's Chamber of Commerce, whoever it is that might exist within your town. Okay. We were then ready to actually start making calls. So when we knocked on the door, we had a couple of things in hand. The first thing we did was actually print out little business cards under the auspices of the Litchfield Energy Task Force, with the task force member's name, his address, her address, and contact information. And that legitimized us as a representative of the task force when making the sales call. Also, let me back up a bit. We decided that it would be harder for that small business owner to dismiss us if we actually walked in the door and went face to face, as opposed to doing it over the phone. So all of our calls were actually live, walking into the business. Second thing we had in hand was a shortened version of the contractor list. So Justin, if you could go back to that spreadsheet, and the second tab has the abbreviated SBNA approved contractor list. So we would explain the program, walk through the basic components, what the benefits were for the business owner, explain the process, and if there was acceptance and agreement to go forward, we would then present this list of the approved contractors to that small business owner and encourage the owner to make a selection as to who they wanted to actually come out and conduct the audit. In some cases, they wanted some help in making a selection, and if they did that, we would step forward and make a recommendation. Once that was done, we would then present them a sign-up form. So Justin, if you could find the sign-up form. So this is a one-pager that basically we would use with the small business owner, having made a decision to go forward. We would enter the business name, the address, their contact information, their email, and then capture critical information that Doug or any of the other contractors in the program need. For example, we have to have their CLMP account number if they're buying their electricity from CLMP, otherwise it would be UI. We would put down hours of and days of operation. square footage of the operation, whether the small business is owned or rented or leased. So this is information that contractor would want to have ideally before actually making that first call to conduct the audit. So if we're able to gather the information and deliver it from the auditor, we're actually adding some value to the process. We would then ask the small business owner to sign the document, having then filled in who it was that was going to conduct the audit. And then I would typically offer the small business owner to make the contact with the contractor myself, just to remove one thing from that business owner's list of things to do. And generally, everybody has agreed to allow me to actually make that first contact. So I would then turn this sign-up form into a PDF and email it to the contractor so that contractor has everything they need to get started. It's also a way of making sure the contractor associates or affiliates the Litchfield Energy Task Force with this particular business in those instances when a finder's fee was paid. So if the whole process ends up with the program being implemented and energy saving steps integrated into the operation, that finder's fee will more likely find its way to the task force. Okay.
And
so,
John, just to be clear about that
thing to review is,
yeah, just to
sure.
be clear about that, that was something that you called contractors individually and negotiated. You said, "Hey, we're wanting to do this program. We're wondering if you guys would be willing to make some contribution to our task force for doing that." And just reflecting back what I remember about this, so that now when you're going out to these businesses, there's some small amount of money that's coming to the task force that supports your other work with the task force, other initiatives or printing costs or whatever it is that you've got going on.
That's correct. And there is reference to those finder's fees on that spreadsheet that we were looking at earlier. So I would know which contractors had agreed to make a finder fee payment, and if that was the contractor that was selected, when I passed on the sign-up form, I would just confirm that that was the agreement that was in place.
And just to be clear too on the purpose of the profiles that you made, it was a really thorough job that you all did, sort of vetting these contractors, and the purpose was to get a sense of what the capabilities and sort of what kinds of things the contractors did and what they were strongest with, and then based on that information, you sort of vetted the list and chose the folks who were willing to come to the area and who did the vast majority of the projects in house, vast majority of the types of projects in house. Is that right, John?
That's right. Really what prompted it was that we wanted to be sure that someone was willing to come to Litchfield. But the opportunity, once we had these contractors on the phone, to gather other information about what it was that they did they do the work themselves? Did they outsource it? And then we discovered this finder fee issue. We didn't realize that that was an opportunity until we actually made a couple of these calls. So it turned out to be a very valuable educational experience for the task force, as we got a much better appreciation of the contractor group, what it was they did, and how they went about doing their work. I must say that I was impressed with really everybody that I talked to. Everybody had a real good command of the program, of the systems that needed to be audited. So it was very difficult for me to make a recommendation based on what I heard, just because the quality of everybody seemed to be quite high.
Great.
All right, so we then got into the field. People started making calls, and we realized that this could be a program that could run months, maybe even years, depending on the energy within the task force. And because there's always turnover within any volunteer group, we decided it would be a good idea to capture the results as we went along. So we created a Google document where members of the task force, having made a call on a business, would log in information about the call that they had completed. And this way that we would just memorialize information to refer back to as needed as the program continued to unfold. So you can see the headers. It's pretty self-explanatory, but we would fill this out as we go along. The last thing to just make reference to is that we were learning a lot as we went along. So we've created what I call pearls, or key insights. This is the third tab on the spreadsheet. So these are things that you might just want to read through on your own. I'll call out a couple. It's kind of hard to read. The first one, number one, is it's absolutely crucial when gathering information about a small business that's agreed to go forward. You have to have the electric account number to pass on to the contractor. That contractor then goes into the CLMP or UI database and creates, I guess, an account, so to speak. They need that account number to go in and get that process started. So that's one important thing to recall. It's also very useful if they have the other information that's on that sign-up form, but the single most important part is the account number. Second point to call out is number 3. Jean brought this up in one of her questions to Doug, noting that many small businesses do lease their property. We have discovered that the payback period for the programs that have been agreed to generally run 2 to 4 years. Doug may want to comment on that. So it's useful to sort through this with the business owner early on, and you'd want them to have 3 to 4 years left on that lease for them to be comfortable signing up and taking on the obligation of paying for these upgrades. The last thing to note is point number 11. If you could scroll down, Justin. Feedback that we've collected from contractors is that about 80% of the small businesses will not experience any increase in their monthly electric bill during the payback period, because the savings realized by the steps that have been recommended and adopted will more than cover what needs to be paid back. So in effect, what they would pay going forward is the same electric bill that had been paying historically. The savings as a result of the new systems put in would begin to pay back the balance due after the incentives. In about 20% of the cases, the savings realized by the proposal aren't significant enough so that the small business may have to actually pay more out of pocket on a month-to-month basis going forward to pay back what's due over those 3 or 4 years. In my experience, I found one small business owner who fell into this category, and because it was going to cost him more out of pocket, he decided not to participate. So just be aware that you may encounter a business owner who falls into that 20% category, but realize most of them, i.e. 80%, will realize no increase in out-of-pocket when paying off their bill. So there's a lot there. Trust me, it's not as complicated or as daunting as it may appear at first blush. And actually, when you get out into the field, practice the pitch, and you make it, you realize how many people actually are eager to sign up. And then it's a matter of determining their appetite in adopting what is proposed from the contractor. So let's take a time out and open it up for questions. So just a moment, am I still connected?
I can hear you, John.
We may have lost Justin.
Are we unmuted?
Hello?
Hello? This is Carol Brook. I had a question.
Yes, Carol, go ahead.
Well, first of all, John, I want to congratulate you on a very impressive administrative plan for getting that whole program organized and put together in such thoughtful way. That's very impressive. My question relates primarily to how did you do after you went at this for several months relative to your key company goal? Did you manage to?
Carol, unfortunately, you're breaking up on me, so I'm not completely getting the question. But I think you're asking how have we done?
Yes, relative to your goal. Yeah, how have you done?
Okay, I think we've probably made close to 15 to 20 calls. There was a fair amount of energy with the task force in the spring. I must admit, things seemed to tail off as the summer months arrived, and people got occupied by vacations and other things, and our task force hasn't met in a number of months. So I think we've struggled or suffered by virtue of the summer season. I would say I think there were about 16 calls that had taken place. The majority had agreed to conduct the audit. There were a handful, maybe 5, that declined. The reason for the decline was that the small business, we had a number of banks, went back into their records and they discovered that they had conducted an audit 2 or 3 years ago. So the determination was that because of that fairly recent audit, it didn't make that much sense to go forward. There was one other business owned by a gentleman who was about to retire, and he was going to make a decision about the continued ownership of the business, and he decided to pass. But the majority had agreed to the audit. As I mentioned earlier, I had one gentleman who owned 2 businesses who experienced an increase in his out-of-pocket monthly electric bill required to pay off the loan because the energy savings weren't significant enough to cover it and to keep his energy bill going forward as it had been in the past. So for that reason,
Welcome to GoToWebinar, web events made easy.
The proposal has come in, one to a nonprofit, and that nonprofit is in the process of securing grant monies to pay for the entire cost. They elected not to do it over a period of 2 years.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, web events made easy.
Great. And Jean Dismay had a question. I'm going to unmute Jean here. Jean, you should be on the line.
Which was, the businesses that we contacted immediately wanted insulation, and that was something that's not generally done.
Right.
So that's kind of surprising to me. And did you run into cases like that? I guess really what I'm trying to get to is that your second step, which is figuring out who are the best people to go to and who to approach in terms of the businesses, and we seem a little hung up on that step because every time we turn around we're getting no, this won't qualify, no, that won't qualify, we can't do these people.
Right. Well, we turned.
Can you help us with that?
I think so, because we struggled with that as well, and spent some number of meetings trying to get our arms around how to best profile the companies, the small businesses, so that we were pointed in the right direction. I think after having been in the field for a while, I could simplify it for you. And I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about this. I would focus on those operations that appear to have the most lights burning for the longest periods of time.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but the drivers of the savings is really lighting in most cases, indoor or outdoor.
Right.
And if you can find an operation that's got lights on a lot, I'd just put them at the top of your list.
Okay. That's pretty easy. Yep.
Yeah.
And
another comment that I addressed this briefly, but and this may be an experience unique to Litchfield, but the level of confidence among the task force members to actually go in and make these calls was not nearly where it needed to be. And I think the summer months have served up an excuse for people not to actually get out into the field and make calls. And we're gonna gather together a little later this month for the first meeting in a couple of months, and I think this will be one of the focus of what we want to accomplish and get people confident and energized again. You may or may not find this with your own task forces, but I'm raising it just in case you do, because it's probably one of the primary impediments that we have, and it's really an internal issue. Just getting people comfortable with the idea of becoming a salesperson and knocking on the door and getting a conversation going.
I would I would comment on that. Only that I happen to, as the general manager and the sales manager for our company, as well as a member of the Enfield Energy Task Force, John's so right. I mean, I have salespeople that don't even want to make sales calls. But I would offer this, that your knowledge, and again, John hit the nail on the head. Lighting is the driver of all of this. I can't tell you how many phone calls I get from the, from the Kiwanis Club, and I go in there, and they got, 6 lamps with CFLs screwed in them, and and they got an old oil furnace in the basement, and they want me to help them. That's not what the program is designed to do. It's KWH savings, and so if you can find the lighting opportunities, those are the ones. And so I would add to that, and I would challenge all of us that the spring and the summer and the fall are the best times of years to be out there, because once you identify what the opportunities are, and I'm not necessarily saying you need to know what the difference is between a T12 and a T8 and a T5 or a U-bend or all those technologies, but to be out on Main Street and walking into that business owner and looking up and seeing all these lights is to say, I think you have an opportunity to save energy, and I want to help you to do that, as opposed to asking them on the phone, because you can't see what's in their business. And I would absolutely encourage every task force to get out there, either through the chamber or the Rotary or whatever means you have, and actually be in their businesses, and if at all possible. And I don't know proximity, obviously, Litchfield and certain towns, West Hartford, got a lot of Main Street, a lot of retailers right there. It's easier. Others are more eclectic and spread out. So I know it's not a simple answer.
Yeah. Well, I'll pick up on that, and I think that's a great point. There are two sort of organizing things that I'd just say to supplement what I think is really a brilliant piece of a brilliant toolkit that John has put together. I mean, I think I can't say how much I support the idea of putting together a strategic plan and the value that has for a task force and getting clear on what it wants to do and how it's going to go about the steps to get there. But two other things that I just add to that, that I think the question of framing is really important, and this is true in business outreach. This is true in home energy solutions outreach. It's true in most anything, that you'll be the most successful when you ask the question, what's really important to the business owner here? What do they most care about? And how is what I'm bringing relevant to that? It's oftentimes, the answer to that question is oftentimes money. I mean, that's sort of an inherent thing with businesses. But I'd encourage folks to stretch beyond and be curious about other things. Money is obviously a thing. If you can say this will save you money, that's obviously an incentive for folks. But I think a lot of business owners are interested in having a facility that's up to date. Presenting a sort of good-looking business to their customers that's up to date. The sort of esteem and attention that they would get as someone who has taken advantage of this program. Maybe this is something that they might want to tout, is, hey, we've taken advantage of this program. We're making a commitment to sustainability as our company. Recognition in their town. There are lots of things that might drive a business owner to want to do this, and getting in touch with that and trying it out. Try it out in a business owner. Try framing your your pitch to them in a certain way. Say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to save money, and it's an opportunity for you to really stand as a leader in our community, leading the other businesses by saying, you know what, it's important to me to have a business that's sustainable. So try those things out, and I think the framing, sort of picking up what Doug is saying, the framing and sort of thinking of what is important to this business owner is important. The only other thing I'd add is that when you go about this outreach, one of the sort of key lessons of doing outreach like this is to have a multi-touch, multi-channel approach. That's a way to talk about the kind of outreach is multi-touch and multi-channel. So multi-touch means that a person hears this opportunity more than once. Maybe they saw an ad in the newspaper that you took out, or maybe they got a mailer that you sent in coordination with the utilities. I know sometimes the utilities are willing to partner with task forces and send out mailers. And then when you come into the business, they've already seen it at least one other place. Maybe they got an email about it too, so that they've heard it coming from multiple directions. And then multi-channel is just to say from different sort of channels. So from an in-person conversation with someone on the task force, from a colleague at the business, the Litchfield Area Business Association or your local Chamber of Commerce, through email, through an op-ed or some sort of article in the newspaper, that really serves to pretty radically increase people's interest in saying yes to something, yes to whatever it is that you're doing outreach for. And that's true for home energy solutions outreach. It's true for lots of different things. And in this case, multi-touch and multi-channel will likely help strengthen the case when you go into this business, for them to say yes.
I think just to echo what Justin is saying, as an old marketing guy, you really do want to take advantage of what I call the echo effect. And as he's describing, if people are hearing it from different sources, they'll begin to buy into the basic message. I had just two quick things to offer, prompted by Justin and Doug's comments, that are really designed to build the confidence of your task force at the front end of beginning to make calls. The first is, we identified 3 businesses in town who had already undergone an audit and had implemented energy saving steps. So a number of us went out, called on those 3 businesses, chatted with the small business owner, and gathered their experience. And in all cases, they were enthusiastic adopters of the program, were willing to share their experience with other interested parties. So we collected their business cards, and it served to boost the confidence and the energy in all of us who kind of sat in on these conversations. The second thing that you can consider doing is, if you've got somebody on the task force who is comfortable making these calls and has actually done a couple, to invite other task force members who are a little reluctant to go along and just silently observe. And we've done that in Litchfield, and that's also served to kind of get people up and over the hump, to the point where they can make the calls themselves.
Great. Well, we've got just a few minutes left. Carol or Jean, if you folks have questions, just go ahead and raise your hand, or I can unmute you. And if not, we can go ahead and wrap up. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and just unmute both Carol and Jean for any sort of final comments or questions that you have.
This is Carol. I just want to say,
I have. Go ahead.
It's been very informative, and thank you for organizing this and pulling it all together.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to respond to a question after the last webinar, which you asked for suggestions. And I'm wondering, I would put this on the agenda as a webinar for my Energy Commission to attend live. So I'm wondering if there's any way to coordinate other Energy Commission meetings so that we can all listen at the same time and participate together. That might be more useful than having one person from each group attend. So it's just a suggestion in terms of coordinating the next, whatever the next webinar is.
Yeah, it's a great point. Thanks, Jean. Doug, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you're still on the line here. You had made a comment earlier about wanting to respond to something that John said about the payback period. If that's still of interest to you, we can go ahead, and otherwise we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I guess one of the things we find as we're out there is sometimes there are those in the greatest need, and what ends up happening is you look at we go out and do an audit, and half the lights in their building are out. And what folks don't typically understand is that you can't see, but it's a great way to save energy because the utility won't count that towards energy savings. And so one of the things that happens, and sometimes why people have money out of pocket, or their electric bill goes up as a result of this audit and they don't actually implement it, is because if you have 5 or 6 lights out of 20 or 30 lights in your business, the utility doesn't count that towards savings. And I think you need to help people to understand that, or to identify with that once they have that proposal in front of them. Or if there's a lot of lights out, I'd actually encourage them to change them before someone comes in to do that audit, because then they will get credit for that, for that light being on. And by the way, just because a fluorescent tube is out, that ballast is still drawing current, and yet the utility will not count it towards your incentive fund.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. Thanks, Doug. So if there's nothing else, I'd like to just go ahead and thank again John Post and Doug Lombardi. Both have volunteered their time to put together these presentations, to put together these toolkits, to host this webinar tonight. And you folks are great. This is just a great resource for folks. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
And I'll just say again, I'm Justin Haaheim. I'm at Clean Water Action. I've got the information up here on the screen. I'll actually be moving on from Clean Water at the end of this month. So I put the email address for the Hartford Clean Water Action office, which is a way after I've moved on that you can continue to contact folks there, Roger Smith or others, with questions. And I'd really support people in general to contact Doug, John, or us at Clean Water with any questions to follow up. So with that, thanks again to John and Doug, and thanks to everyone who attended and everyone who will watch this after the fact. Real pleasure to support you all.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
Yep. Have a good night,
Thanks, everybody.
everybody.